My name is Abigail, and I'm 32. Standing outside the maternity ward, I held my newborn twins, their tiny fingers curling around mine. The hospital's sterile scent clung to me, but my heart swelled with love. I kept glancing at the parking lot, waiting for my husband Nathan to pull up to share this moment. He hadn't answered my calls since labor started, but I told myself he was just busy. Other families laughed nearby, and I clutched my mother's old blanket, feeling alone. Have you ever trusted someone with your whole heart? I thought I had. If you're watching, tell me where you're from. Like and subscribe to hear what happened next. The parking lot felt colder than it should have, even with the summer sun beating down. My twins, swaddled in soft cotton, slept against my chest, their gentle breaths the only thing keeping me grounded. I shifted their carrier, my arms aching, and dialed Nathan again. Straight to voicemail. His familiar greeting mocked me, promising he'd call back soon. I hung up my thumb, hovering over his name, willing him to appear. He was probably stuck at work, I told myself, but the silence gnawed at me. Other families moved past, their laughter echoing off the asphalt. A young couple pushed a stroller, the dad carrying balloons. I looked away, my throat tightening. I'd been waiting nearly an hour, the hospital doors hissing open and closed behind me. My phone stayed quiet. I tried texting instead, my fingers clumsy. "Where are you?" "We're ready to go home." No response. A nurse stepped out, her sneakers squeaking. She had warm eyes and a name tag that read, Clara. "You okay, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. I nodded too quickly, forcing a smile. "Just waiting for my husband," I said. "He's running late." Clara tilted her head like she saw through me. She offered me a bottle of water, and I took it, grateful for the distraction. I sat on a bench, the twins' carrier beside me. My mind replayed the last time I saw Nathan 2 days ago before labor started. He'd kissed my forehead, promising to be there when the babies came. "Work's crazy," he'd said, "but I'll make it." I'd believed him. I always did. Now doubt crept in, sharp and unwelcome. What if he was hurt or stuck in traffic? I pushed the thoughts away, sipping the water, its coldness jolting me. Clara lingered nearby, checking her clipboard but glancing my way. "You sure you don't need anything?" she asked again. I hesitated, then shook my head. "He'll be here," I said, more to myself than to her. She nodded, but her eyes held something heavy, like she'd seen this before. I didn't ask what. I couldn't. My phone buzzed, and my heart leapt. But it was just a notification, some spam about car insurance. I scrolled through our texts, searching for clues. Nathan's last message was from yesterday morning. "Love you, can't wait to meet them." I clung to those words, but they felt hollow now. I called again, whispering please under my breath. Voicemail again. The twins stirred one, letting out a soft whimper. I adjusted their blankets, my hands trembling. They needed to be fed soon, and I hadn't packed enough formula for a long wait. Panic flickered, but I shoved it down. Nathan would come. He had to. We'd planned this life together, picked out cribs, argued over names. He wouldn't just vanish. Clara approached again, this time, holding a manila envelope. "This came for you during your stay," she said, her voice careful. "They tried to deliver it to your room, but you were in labor." I frowned, taking the envelope. It was heavy, official-looking, with my name typed in bold. Abigail Marie Thompson. No return address, just a local law firm stamp. "What's this?" I asked, my stomach twisting. Clara shrugged, but her expression was guarded. "I don't know, hon," she said, "but you should open it." I set the envelope on my lap, my fingers tracing the edges. It felt wrong, like touching something that could burn. I glanced at the twins, their peaceful faces, and told myself it was nothing. Probably hospital paperwork. But my pulse raced. I tore the envelope open, my hands clumsy. Inside was a stack of documents, the top page stamped with big letters, "Petition for Divorce." My breath caught the words blurring. Nathan's name was there listed as the petitioner. My name, the respondent. The date was from 2 days ago while I was pushing our twins into the world. I flipped through the pages, my mind screaming, "No, this isn't real." A small note slipped out a post-it in Nathan's messy scrawl. "I'm sorry, it's better this way." My chest tightened like someone had punched me. I read it again, then again, willing the words to change. They didn't. Clara knelt beside me, her hand on my shoulder. "Breathe," she said, her voice steady. I couldn't. The world spun, the parking lot too bright, too loud. "How could he?" I whispered, my voice breaking. Clara didn't answer, just squeezed my shoulder. I stared at the papers, my eyes burning. The twins whimpered again, and I snapped back, forcing air into my lungs. I had to stay strong for them. But inside, I was crumbling, the life I'd imagined slipping away. I clutched the divorce papers, my knuckles white as Clara's hand stayed steady on my shoulder. The twins' soft cries pulled me back, their hunger louder now. I fumbled with the diaper bag, my hands shaking too much to open the formula canister. Clara took it gently, mixing a bottle with practiced ease. She didn't push me to talk, just handed me the bottle and sat close. I fed one twin, my eyes locked on her tiny mouth, trying to anchor myself in her calm. "You don't have to figure it out now," Clara said, her voice low. I nodded, but my mind was a storm. Nathan's note burned in my pocket, those 5 words looping endlessly. Better this way. For who I wanted to scream, to call him, and demand answers. But my phone felt like a brick in my hand. I didn't trust my voice not to break. Clara glanced at the papers. "You want me to hold those?" she asked. I shook my head, stuffing them into the bag. They felt like evidence of a crime I didn't commit. I looked at the parking lot again, half expecting Nathan to appear to say it was a mistake. But the spaces stayed empty, the sun sinking lower, casting long shadows over the asphalt. "I need to get home," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Clara nodded. "I can drive you," she offered. "My shift's over." I hesitated, pride telling me to refuse, but the twins needed a crib and I needed walls around me. "Okay," I said, swallowing hard. "Thank you." Clara's car was an old sedan, the seats worn but clean. I strapped the twins' carrier in the back, double-checking the buckles. As we pulled out, the hospital faded in the rear view, and I felt a strange relief, like leaving a bad dream. But the papers in my bag were real, and Nathan's absence was real. I stared out the window, the city blurring past my reflection, pale in the glass. Clara broke the silence. "My sister went through something like this," she said, her eyes on the road. Her husband left when she was pregnant. No warning, just gone. I turned to her, surprised. "How'd she handle it?" I asked. Clara sighed. "She didn't at first. Fell apart, but she rebuilt stronger." "You will too." Her words hung there heavy with truth I wasn't ready to face. I wanted to ask more, but my phone buzzed. My heart jumped, hoping it was Nathan. It was my sister Hannah. Just checking in her text read, "How's my new niece and nephew?" I stared at the screen, my thumb frozen. Hannah had warned me about Nathan months ago, said he seemed distant. I'd snapped at her, told her to mind her own business. Now I couldn't face her pity. "I'm fine." I typed back a lie that felt easier than the truth. Clara glanced over. "Family?" she asked. I nodded, slipping the phone into my pocket. She didn't push, just turned on the radio, soft jazz filling the car. The twins slept, their faces peaceful, and I envied their oblivion. When we reached my apartment, the building loomed darker than I remembered. Clara helped me carry the twins' things up the stairs, her presence a quiet comfort. Inside, the air was stale, the living room untouched since I'd left for the hospital. I set the carrier down, my legs wobbling. Clara placed the diaper bag on the counter. "You need anything, you call me," she said, handing me her number on a scrap of paper. "I will," I said, though I wasn't sure I meant it. She gave me a long look, like she saw the weight I was carrying, then left her footsteps fading down the hall. I locked the door, the click too loud in the silence. The twins stirred, and I lifted them, one in each arm, their warmth steadying me. I sat on the couch, the divorce papers spilling out of the bag onto the floor. I stared at them, my chest tight. The words swam, irreconcilable differences, dissolution of marriage. Nathan had signed them while I was in labor, while I was calling his name between contractions. I thought of our last anniversary, how he'd cooked dinner, burned the chicken, and we'd laughed until we cried. Was that a lie too? My eyes stung, but I blinked hard, refusing to let tears fall. The twins fussed, and I rocked them, humming a lullaby my mom used to sing. Their cries softened, but mine didn't. I couldn't stay here trapped in this moment, but I didn't know how to move forward. Nathan's note was still in my pocket, and I pulled it out, crumpling it in my fist. "Better this way," he'd written. I wanted to burn it, to burn him out of my life. But all I could do was hold my babies tighter, their heartbeats louder than my breaking one. The apartment felt too small, the walls pressing in as I paced with a twin in each arm. Their soft coos couldn't drown out the silence Nathan left behind. It was morning, 2 days since the hospital, and I hadn't slept more than an hour at a time. The divorce papers sat on the kitchen counter, a cruel reminder I couldn't touch. I needed answers, so I opened my laptop, the screen's glow harsh against the dim room. Our bank account login stared back at me. I typed in the password, my fingers stiff. The balance loaded and my stomach dropped. Half our savings gone. Thousands drained, leaving just enough for a month's rent. My breath hitched, the twins stirring against me. I checked the transaction history, each withdrawal a stab. Nathan had pulled the money out the day I went into labor. While I was screaming through contractions, he was erasing our future. I slammed the laptop shut, startling the twins. Their cries pierced the air, and I rocked them, whispering apologies. My mind raced. How could he plan this? I thought of our late-night talks, budgeting for diapers and a bigger place. Was every word a lie? I set the twins in their cribs, my hands trembling, and grabbed my phone. I needed to know where he was. I opened my email, searching for anything from Nathan. A new message from a law firm sat unopened, sent yesterday. My heart pounded as I clicked it. The lawyer's words were cold, formal. Nathan had relocated to Colorado, effective immediately. He'd waived all rights to our shared assets, but requested mediation for custody. Custody. The word burned. He'd abandoned us, but now he wanted my babies. I stood frozen, the phone shaking in my hand. The twins settled their breathing even, but I couldn't calm down. I walked to the bedroom, needing something to ground me. I opened Nathan's closet, expecting his familiar jackets. Empty hangers stared back. His shoes, his sweaters, all gone. The only trace was a single sock on the floor, crumpled like he'd been in a hurry. I sank to my knees, the carpet rough under me. Memories flooded in, Nathan hanging his shirts, joking about my messy side of the closet. I'd laughed, thinking we had forever. Now his absence was everywhere. I crawled to the dresser, opening his drawer on instinct. Something glinted inside, buried under old receipts. I pulled it out, my fingers closing around cold metal. His wedding ring. The sight of it broke something in me. I held it up, the gold dull in the morning light. We'd picked it out together, my hands on his as we slid it onto his finger. He'd promised to love me, to build a life. I clenched the ring, my nails digging into my palm. He didn't just leave. He planned it, erased us, and took everything we'd built. A knock at the door jolted me. I shoved the ring into my pocket, wiping my face. It was Sadie, my best friend, holding a bag of bagels and coffee. Her smile faded when she saw me. "You look like hell," she said, stepping inside. I tried to laugh, but it came out wrong, sharp and brittle. She set the food down, her eyes scanning the room. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice soft. I didn't want to say it, didn't want it to be real. But the words spilled out. "Nathan's gone," I said. "He took half our money and filed for divorce." Sadie's eyes widened, but she didn't look surprised. My stomach twisted. "You knew something, didn't you?" I asked, my voice low. She hesitated, her hands fidgeting. "I saw him last week," she said finally. "He was packing a suitcase, said it was for a work trip. I pressed him, and he told me to stay out of it. I thought he was just stressed. I'm sorry, I should have told you." Her words hit like a slap. My best friend, the one I'd trusted with everything, had kept this from me. "You should have told me," I said, my voice rising. "You saw him leaving and said nothing." Sadie reached for me, but I stepped back, the ring heavy in my pocket. "I trusted you," I said, my throat burning. She looked away, tears in her eyes, but I didn't care. Betrayal piled on, betrayal, and I was drowning in it. The twins cried from the nursery, their wails sharp. I turned away from Sadie, my chest tight with anger. Nathan's ring pressed against my thigh, a reminder of promises broken. I didn't know who to trust anymore, but I knew one thing: I couldn't let him take anything else from me. I walked past Sadie, my bare feet cold on the hardwood, and headed to the nursery. The twins' cries grew sharper, slicing through the fog in my head. I lifted them one at a time, their small bodies warm against my chest. Their need was simple, pure, and I clung to it, trying to block out the sting of Sadie's confession. She followed me, hovering in the doorway, her voice small. "I didn't know how bad it was," she said. "I thought he'd come back." I didn't look at her, focusing on the twins as I settled into the rocking chair. Their bottles were ready on the table, and I fed them, the rhythmic sucking, the only sound in the room. Sadie's words echoed Nathan's note, both hollow, both excuses. I wanted to believe her, to hold on to the friend who'd been at every milestone, but trust felt like a trap now. Everyone was hiding something. My phone rang, the screen lighting up on the table. I glanced over, my stomach lurching. It was Patricia, Nathan's mother. I froze, the bottle slipping in my hand. The twins fussed, and I adjusted my grip, my pulse racing. I didn't want to answer, but her calls were rare, always laced with judgment. What if she knew where Nathan was? I hit accept, bracing myself. "Abigail." Her voice was sharp, no warmth. "I heard about the divorce. What did you do to my son?" The accusation hit like a slap, and I nearly dropped the phone. "What did I do?" I said, my voice shaking. "He left me, Patricia. He filed while I was giving birth." The twins squirmed, sensing my tension, and I forced myself to breathe, to keep rocking. Patricia scoffed. "Nathan wouldn't do that unless you pushed him," she said. "You were always so clingy, always demanding. I bet you drove him away with your nagging." My mouth opened, but no words came. Her words dug into old wounds, times she'd criticized my cooking, my job, my everything. I'd tried so hard to please her, to be the wife Nathan deserved. Now she was rewriting it all. "He took our savings," I said, my voice low, barely controlled. "He left us with nothing." Patricia paused, then laughed, cold and bitter. "You're lying," she said. "My son's not a thief. You probably mismanaged the money like you mismanaged your marriage." I gripped the phone, my knuckles aching. The twins finished their bottles, and I set them in their cribs, my hands trembling with rage. "I'm not lying," I said, but she cut me off. "You're not good enough for him, Abigail." "Never were. He's better off." The line went dead, her words hanging in the air like smoke. I stared at the phone, my vision blurring. Sadie stepped closer, her face pale. What did she say? She asked, but I couldn't speak. I felt like I was falling, the ground gone beneath me. A soft knock came from the front door. I ignored it, but it came again, insistent. Sadie opened it, and I heard Marcus, my neighbor, his voice low. "Just checking in," he said. "Saw you come home yesterday, looked rough." I stayed in the nursery, not ready for kindness. I didn't trust it. But Marcus stepped inside, carrying a small container of soup. "His daughter made it," he said. "Thought you could use something warm." I nodded, my throat too tight to thank him. He set the soup on the counter, glancing at the divorce papers still scattered there. He didn't ask, but his eyes held a quiet understanding. "My ex pulled something similar," he said unprompted. "Left me and our kid without a word. It gets better, but it hurts like hell first." His words were meant to comfort, but they only deepened the ache. I didn't want this to be my story. Sadie tried to speak again, but I cut her off. "I need to be alone," I said, my voice flat. She hesitated, then nodded, grabbing her bag. "Call me, okay?" she said, but I didn't answer. Marcus lingered a moment, then left too, the door clicking shut. The silence was suffocating, the twins' soft breaths, the only anchor. I sank to the floor, Nathan's ring still in my pocket, Patricia's words in my head. I wasn't enough, and now I was alone with two babies who deserved better than this broken mess. The hospital loomed ahead, its glass doors catching the late afternoon sun. I adjusted the twins' carrier, my arms sore from the weight, and stepped off the bus. It was a routine checkup just a week after discharge, but my stomach churned. I hadn't been back since that day in the parking lot, and the memory of Nathan's note still stung. I pushed through the entrance, the antiseptic smell hitting me, and focused on the twins, their soft gurgles a reminder to keep moving. The waiting room was crowded, voices overlapping, but I kept my head down, clutching the diaper bag. I signed in my handwriting shaky and sat near the window. The twins slept, their tiny chests rising and falling, and I envied their peace. My phone stayed silent, no word from Nathan since the lawyer's email. I told myself it was better this way, but the quiet felt like a lie. A shadow crossed the window, and I glanced up, my breath catching. Nathan stood in the parking lot, his familiar frame unmistakable. He was leaning against a car, not ours, his posture casual, like he hadn't torn my world apart. My heart slammed against my ribs, a mix of rage and disbelief. What was he doing here? I gripped the carrier, my knuckles whitening, and watched as a woman stepped out of the car, her laugh carrying through the glass. She was tall, her hair sleek and blonde, her hand resting on Nathan's arm. They looked comfortable, intimate, like they'd been together for years, not days. My chest tightened, the air too thick to breathe. The woman turned her face sharp and confident, and I realized I didn't know her. But Nathan did. He smiled at her, a smile I hadn't seen in months, and my stomach twisted, bile rising in my throat. I stood, my legs unsteady, and moved closer to the window, needing to see clearly. The twins stirred, but I couldn't look away. Nathan's hand brushed the woman's back, guiding her toward the hospital entrance. They were coming inside. My mind screamed to run to hide, but my feet wouldn't move. The diaper bag slipped from my shoulder, hitting the floor with a thud, and a few heads turned, but I didn't care. The door slid open, and Nathan walked in, his eyes scanning the room. He saw me, and for a split second, his face froze, guilt flickering before he masked it with a nod. The woman, oblivious, stayed close, her heels clicking on the tile. I wanted to scream, to demand why he was here, why he was with her, but my voice caught trapped behind a wall of shock. "Abigail," he said, his tone too calm, like we were old friends. I need to see the twins. My mouth went dry, his words slicing through me. He stepped closer, the woman trailing behind, her eyes narrowing as she sized me up. I clutched the carrier, pulling it against me, my body a shield. You don't get to just show up, I said, my voice low, trembling with fury. Nathan sighed, like I was the one being difficult. They're my kids too, he said. I have rights. The word rights hit like a punch, and I stepped back, my hip bumping the window. The woman smirked, her lips curling. Let's not make a scene, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. Nathan's got enough to deal with thanks to you. Her words burned, and I turned to her, my eyes blazing. Who are you? I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. She raised an eyebrow, glancing at Nathan, who looked away. I'm Rachel, she said, like it explained everything. Nathan's girlfriend. The room tilted, her words a hammer against my heart. Girlfriend. Not a fling, not a mistake. A girlfriend already, while I was still bleeding from giving birth. Rachel stepped closer, her perfume sharp, overwhelming. You really thought he'd stay with you? She said, her voice low, cruel. A tired, needy thing like you, Nathan deserves better. My vision blurred, her words echoing Patricia's, Sadie's, my own fears. I looked at Nathan, waiting for him to stop her, to say something, but he just stood there, his jaw tight, his eyes on the floor. The twins whimpered, and I snapped back, my hands tightening on the carrier. Get away from us, I said, my voice cracking but firm. Nathan shook his head like I was unreasonable. We'll talk about this later, he said, turning to leave. Rachel followed, tossing a final glance over her shoulder, her smirk a knife in my chest. The doors closed behind them, and I sank into the chair, my body shaking, the weight of their words crushing me. My hands shook as I gripped the twins' carrier, the waiting room's hum fading to a dull roar. Rachel's smirk lingered in my mind, her words carving deeper with every heartbeat. I wanted to chase after them, to scream until Nathan admitted what he'd done, but my legs felt glued to the chair. The other patients' stares burned my skin, their whispers a low buzz I couldn't ignore. I pulled the twins closer, their warmth the only thing keeping me from unraveling. A hand touched my arm, and I flinched, looking up to see Clara, the nurse from last week. Her face was tight, her eyes darting toward the doors Nathan and Rachel had exited. I saw them, she said, her voice hushed but urgent. I overheard something you need to know. My stomach lurched, dread pooling inside me. What I asked, my voice barely audible, afraid of what came next. Clara glanced around, then leaned in, her words careful. He was talking to her in the hall, she said. About custody. He's not after the twins, Abigail. He wants leverage to avoid paying child support. Said he'd push for partial custody to scare you into settling cheap. My breath stopped, the room spinning. Nathan wasn't just abandoning us, he was scheming, using our babies as pawns. I stared at Clara, her words sinking in like poison. How could he? I whispered, my throat raw. She shook her head, her expression grim. I've seen guys like him before, she said. They play dirty to win. I wanted to argue, to say Nathan wasn't that cruel, but the truth was there in his silence, in Rachel's taunts, in the money he'd stolen. He'd planned this every step. The twins stirred, one letting out a sharp cry, and I rocked the carrier, my hands clumsy. Clara stayed close, her presence steady, but it wasn't enough. I felt exposed, like everyone in the room could see my failure, my shame. A woman across from me murmured to her husband, her eyes flicking my way, and I imagined her words. Poor thing, left alone, couldn't keep her man. My face burned, and I looked down, unable to meet anyone's gaze. Clara knelt beside me, her voice low. You don't have to face this now, she said, but you're stronger than you think. I didn't feel strong. I felt small, broken, like the life I'd built was a house of cards Nathan had kicked over. I thought of the nursery, the cribs we'd assembled together, the dreams we'd whispered in the dark. All lies, and now he was twisting the knife deeper. A clipboard clattered nearby, and I jumped, my nerves frayed. The nurse at the desk called my name, her voice cutting through the haze. I stood, my legs wobbling, and followed her to the exam room, Clara trailing behind. The doctor's questions blurred weight checks, feeding schedules, but my mind was stuck on Nathan's plan. Rachel's cruelty, the way they'd stood together, untouchable. I nodded through the appointment, my answers mechanical, my thoughts a storm. When we stepped back into the waiting room, Clara pulled me aside, her eyes fierce. "Don't let him win," she said, pressing a folded note into my hand. "My number if you need me." I took it, my fingers numb, and watched her walk away, her scrubs blending into the crowd. The note felt heavy, a lifeline I wasn't ready to grab. I headed for the exit, the twins' carrier bumping against my hip. Outside, the parking lot stretched wide, the air thick with summer heat. I scanned for Nathan, half hoping he'd gone, half dreading he hadn't. The car he'd leaned against was still there, empty now, its chrome glinting like a taunt. I stopped, my chest heaving, the weight of everything: his betrayal, Rachel's words, Clara's warning crashing down. I sank to the curb, the twins beside me, and buried my face in my hands, my sobs silent but shattering, with no way out of this pain. The curb's rough edge bit into my thighs as I sat outside the hospital, the twins' carrier beside me. My hands were still damp from wiping away tears, and Clara's note was crumpled in my fist. Nathan's scheme to use our babies as bargaining chips echoed in my head, each word a fresh wound. But something else stirred a spark beneath the pain. I couldn't let him take more from us. I stood, my legs unsteady but moving, and hailed a cab, the twins' soft breaths urging me forward. Back at the apartment, I tucked the twins into their cribs, their eyelids fluttering in sleep. The quiet was heavy, but I didn't let it swallow me. I grabbed my laptop and searched for a lawyer, my fingers flying over the keys. Names and reviews blurred together, but one stood out. Teresa Caldwell, a family law specialist with a reputation for fighting dirty divorces. I dialed her number, my heart pounding. Teresa's voice was crisp, no nonsense. I explained everything: Nathan's disappearance, the divorce papers, the stolen savings, and Clara's warning about his custody ploy. My voice cracked, but I pushed through the words, spilling out like a dam breaking. Teresa listened, her pauses thoughtful. "You've got a case," she said finally. "But we need evidence. Bank records, emails, anything showing his intent. Can you get those?" I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "I'll find them," I said, my resolve hardening. We set an appointment for tomorrow, and I hung up, adrenaline coursing through me. The apartment felt different now, like a battlefield I could fight on. I opened the desk drawer, pulling out our old financial files, my hands steady for the first time in days. Statements, tax returns, anything with Nathan's name went into a pile. The doorbell buzzed, and I tensed, half expecting Nathan. It was Sadie, her face hesitant, holding a stack of folders. "I heard you on the phone," she said, stepping inside. "I brought some stuff from our old office. Nathan left papers there." I froze, her betrayal still raw, but her eyes were earnest, pleading. I took the folders, my jaw tight. "Thanks," I said, my voice cool but not cruel. Sadie lingered, shifting her weight. "I know I messed up," she said. "I should have told you about Nathan. Let me help now." I looked at her, the friend who'd braided my hair at prom, who'd cried with me when my mom died. Part of me wanted to shut her out, but I needed allies. "Okay," I said, "help me sort through this." She nodded, relief washing over her, and we spread the papers across the table. We worked in silence, the only sound the twins' soft snores from the nursery. Sadie pointed out a bank statement with transfers I hadn't seen, each one dated just before Nathan left. "He was funneling money somewhere," she said, her voice low. I traced the numbers, my anger flaring. This wasn't just abandonment, it was theft, calculated and cold. I set the statement aside, my determination growing. A knock interrupted us, softer this time. Marcus stood at the door, his daughter trailing behind, holding a crayon drawing of a smiling sun. "Thought you could use a pick-me-up," he said, handing it over. I managed a small smile, the bright colors a stark contrast to the gray inside me. Marcus glanced at the papers. "Rough day?" he asked, his tone gentle. I nodded, not ready to explain. He didn't push, just offered to watch the twins if I needed a break. "Actually," I said, an idea forming. "Do you know anyone who's been through a bad divorce?" He thought for a moment. "There's a support group at the community center," he said. "Single parents mostly. They've got stories like yours." I took the flyer he handed me, its edges worn but promising. As Marcus left, I looked at the drawing, then at Sadie still sorting papers. The twins slept safe for now, and Teresa's voice echoed in my mind. "We need evidence." I wasn't just fighting for me anymore. I was fighting for them, for the life Nathan tried to steal. I sat back down, my hands steady, ready to dig deeper, to build a case that would stop him cold. The table was a mess of papers, bank statements mingling with Sadie's office files, each one a piece of Nathan's betrayal. I leaned over a spreadsheet, my eyes burning from hours of reading, but I didn't stop. Sadie highlighted another transfer, her pen scratching the page. "This one's to an account in Colorado," she said, her voice steady. "Same day he filed the papers." I knotted my jaw tight, adding it to the growing stack for Teresa. Every number was a step toward justice. I glanced at the twins' monitor, their soft breathing a quiet rhythm in the background. They were my why, the reason I couldn't crumble. I opened my email, drafting a message to Nathan. My fingers hovered, words forming slowly but deliberately. "You don't get to use our kids," I wrote. "Drop the custody claim, or I'll fight you with everything I have." I hit send, my heart racing, not with fear, but with clarity. This was my line in the sand. Sadie watched me, her eyes wide. "That was bold," she said, a hint of pride in her voice. I shrugged, feeling the weight of my choice settle. "It's not about him anymore," I said. "It's about them." She nodded, and for the first time since her confession, I felt a flicker of our old bond. We weren't fixed, but we were moving forward. The flyer Marcus gave me lay on the counter, its bold letters catching my eye. Single Parent Support Group. I'd been skeptical, but something pulled me toward it. I called the number, my voice shaky but firm, and signed up for the next meeting. The woman on the phone, Joyce, had a warm laugh. "You'll fit right in," she said. "We've all been through the fire." Her words stuck with me, a reminder I wasn't alone. The next evening, I left the twins with Marcus, his daughter giggling as she showed them her stuffed bear. I walked to the community center, the air cool against my skin. The room was small, filled with folding chairs, and people whose eyes held stories like mine. Joyce, a woman with gray-streaked hair, welcomed me with a hug. "Share when you're ready," she said, pointing to a seat. I listened as others spoke, a man whose wife left him with 3 kids, a woman whose ex drained their retirement. Their voices were raw, some angry, some soft, but all carried strength. When it was my turn, I hesitated, my hands twisting in my lap. Then I spoke, my voice low but steady. "My husband left me while I was in labor," I said. "He's trying to take my twins to avoid paying for them." The room went quiet, eyes on me, not with pity, but with understanding. A woman named Lila reached for my hand. "You're here," she said. "That's the first step." Her words hit deep, and I felt something shift, like a door cracking open. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was choosing to fight. The meeting ended with coffee and quiet talks, and I left with names, numbers, and a sense of belonging I hadn't expected. Back home, I found Hannah waiting outside my door, her face nervous but determined. "I'm sorry," she said before I could speak. "I was wrong to push you about Nathan, but I'm here now." She held out a USB drive. I hacked into his old work email. "There's stuff in there, debts loans he hid from you." I stared at her, the sister I'd shut out now, risking everything to help. I took the drive, my throat tight. "Thank you," I said, and we hugged, the rift between us starting to mend. I plugged the drive into my laptop, Hannah beside me. Emails loaded, each one a glimpse into Nathan's secret life creditors chasing him deals he'd made behind my back. One mentioned a loan tied to our joint account, a debt I'd never known about. My anger flared, but it was different now, focused like a blade. I copied everything for Teresa, my hands steady, each click a reclaiming of my power. As Hannah left, I walked to the twins' nursery, their cribs glowing under the nightlight. I pulled out a notebook, one I'd bought for grocery lists but never used. I started writing, not for me, but for them. "Dear my babies, I wrote today. I fought for you. I'll keep fighting so you'll know you're worth it." I closed the notebook, my eyes on their sleeping faces, and stood there silent, my heart full of a quiet, fierce strength. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and stale coffee, its air heavy with quiet tension. I sat in the front row, my hands folded tightly in my lap, the twins safe with Marcus back home. Teresa stood beside me, her briefcase open, papers neatly stacked. Today was the custody hearing, the culmination of weeks spent gathering evidence, bank records, emails, Hannah's findings. My email to Nathan, bold and unyielding, had set this in motion. Now I waited, my stomach knotted for the consequences to unfold. The judge, a woman with sharp eyes and gray hair, called the session to order. Nathan sat across the room, his suit crisp, but his face drawn, no trace of the confidence he'd shown with Rachel. She wasn't here, and that absence felt like a small victory, though I didn't trust it. Teresa leaned over, her voice low. "We've got this," she said. "Your evidence is airtight." I nodded, but my throat was dry, doubt creeping in. Teresa presented our case first, her voice steady as she laid out Nathan's actions. She showed the judge the bank transfers timed to my labor and the emails proving his hidden debts. She read Clara's affidavit detailing Nathan's hospital conversation about using custody as leverage. Each piece was a brick in the wall I'd built, and I watched the judge's face, searching for a reaction. She took notes, her expression unreadable. Nathan's lawyer, a man with slick hair and a loud tie, stood to respond. He argued Nathan was a loving father, forced to leave due to financial strain. I gripped the bench, my nails digging into the wood. Loving father? He'd never even seen the twins. The lawyer claimed Nathan wanted shared custody to build a relationship, but his words rang hollow, a script that didn't match the man I knew. The judge interrupted, her voice cutting through the room. "Where is the respondent's partner?" she asked, glancing at Nathan. His lawyer stammered, saying Rachel had a prior commitment. The judge raised an eyebrow, jotting something down, and I felt a flicker of hope. Rachel's absence wasn't just a coincidence, it was a crack in Nathan's facade. I straightened my hands, loosening slightly. Teresa called me to the stand, and my legs trembled as I walked forward. The courtroom's silence pressed against me, every eye await. I swore in my voice, quiet but clear, and sat facing the judge. Teresa asked me to describe Nathan's abandonment. I spoke of the empty apartment, the drained account, the divorce papers delivered while I was in labor. My voice wavered, but held each word, a truth I'd carried too long. The judge watched me, her pen still, and I felt exposed, like she could see every scar Nathan left. I mentioned Clara's warning, how Nathan planned to manipulate custody for money. The lawyer objected, calling it hearsay, but Teresa countered, citing Clara's affidavit as corroboration. The judge overruled, and I exhaled, my hands steadying. I was telling my story, and someone was listening. Nathan's lawyer cross-examined, his tone smooth but biting. "Isn't it true you pressured Mr. Thompson, causing him to leave?" he asked. I shook my head, my voice firm. I was pregnant with his children, I said. I asked for support, not pressure. He tried to twist my words, suggesting I'd mismanaged our finances, but Teresa's evidence, those bank statements, shut him down. I stepped down, my heart pounding, feeling lighter, like I'd shed a layer of shame. The judge called a recess, and I sat back beside Teresa, my mind racing. Nathan avoided my gaze. His shoulders slumped, and I saw the man he'd become small, cornered, nothing like the one I'd loved. Teresa squeezed my arm. You did great, she said. We're close. I nodded, but the weight of the moment settled in. This wasn't just about winning, it was about reclaiming my life. Outside the courtroom, I checked my phone, expecting nothing. A voicemail from Clara blinked on the screen. I played it, her voice urgent. I reported Nathan to hospital security, she said. Caught him trying to access your records after you left. It's on record now, might help your case. I froze, the hallway's fluorescent lights too bright. Clara had gone beyond kindness, risking her job to protect me. Her act, unasked for, hit me hard, a reminder of the strength around me. I saved the message, my hands trembling, and looked back at the courtroom doors. Nathan's defeat was close, but so was my exposure, every detail of our life laid bare. The judge would decide soon, and I stood still, caught in the quiet before the verdict, my heart heavy with what I'd fought for, and what it had cost. The courtroom doors swung open, and I stepped back inside, my shoes echoing on the tile. The air felt sharper now, charged with the weight of what was coming. I slid into my seat, Teresa's calm presence beside me, a quiet anchor. Nathan sat across the aisle, his hands clasped, staring at the floor. His lawyer whispered something, but Nathan didn't respond. His face pale, like a man who knew the ground was slipping beneath him. The judge returned, her robes rustling as she settled at the bench. She adjusted her glasses, her voice clear and measured. After reviewing the evidence, she said, I find the petitioner's actions constitute abandonment and financial misconduct. My breath caught the words, sinking in slowly like stones in deep water. She continued, granting me full custody of the twins and ordering Nathan to repay the stolen savings plus child support. Teresa's hand brushed mine, a silent victory, but my eyes stayed on Nathan. He didn't move, didn't look up, his shoulders curling inward. His lawyer scribbled notes, but the fight was gone from them. The judge's gavel struck final and sharp, and the room exhaled. People shuffled out their murmurs, a low hum, but I sat frozen, the reality of my win heavy in my chest. Nathan stood, his movement slow, and for a moment our eyes met. His were empty, no anger, no guilt, just a hollow resignation. I waited for him to speak, to beg or blame, but he turned away, his steps heavy as he left the courtroom alone. The door closed behind him, and I felt no triumph, only a strange, quiet ache. He was gone, truly gone, and I'd made it happen. I gathered my things, the weight of the twins' absence sharp. I needed to see them, to hold them, but first, I stepped into the hallway needing air. My phone buzzed, a text from Hannah. You did it. Proud of you. I stared at the words, my throat tight. She'd been there quietly, rebuilding our bond, and now her support felt like a lifeline I hadn't earned. A soft cough broke my thoughts. Patricia, Nathan's mother, stood a few feet away, her purse clutched tightly. Her face was softer than I'd ever seen, her eyes red-rimmed. I braced myself, expecting her venom, but she stepped closer, her voice low. I was wrong, she said, each word deliberate. I believed Nathan's lies about you. I'm sorry, Abigail, for everything. Her apology hit like a wave, unexpected and disarming. I wanted to lash out, to throw her years of criticism back, but I couldn't. She looked small, broken, a mother who'd lost her son to his own choices. I nodded, my lips pressed tight, unable to form words. She turned away, her heels clicking softly, and I watched her go, the space between us, vast and unbridgeable. Back at the apartment, Marcus greeted me with a smile, the twins babbling in their playpen. "They're champs," he said, handing me a coffee. I took it, my hands warming around the mug, and sat beside the twins, their giggles a soft balm. But Patricia's words lingered, mixing with Nathan's silence, the judge's ruling, Clara's risk. I'd won, but the cost was etched in me, a map of battles I hadn't chosen. I opened the mail, expecting bills, but a letter caught my eye. Patricia's handwriting on the envelope. I tore it open, my fingers careful. It was short, her words raw. "I failed you as a mother-in-law. I see Nathan's mistakes now. Please forgive me." I set it down, my eyes stinging not from anger, but from the weight of her regret. It was too late to fix us, but it was something, a crack in the wall of blame she'd built. The twins reached for me, their tiny hands grasping, and I lifted them, their weight grounding me. The apartment was quiet, the day's victories and losses settling like dust. I'd fought for my babies, for our future, but the fight had carved out pieces of me. I sat there, holding them close, my heart steady but heavy, knowing I'd won everything and nothing all at once. The park near my apartment smelled of fresh grass and blooming jasmine, the spring air soft against my skin. I pushed the twins' stroller, their coos mingling with the distant hum of a lawnmower. It was early, the sun just breaking through the trees, and the world felt gentle, like it was holding its breath. Months had passed since the courtroom, since Nathan's defeat, and the sharp edges of that day had dulled, leaving space for something new. I wasn't whole yet, but I was learning how to be. The stroller's wheels crunched over gravel as I followed the path to a quiet bench. The twins babbled, their tiny hands clutching soft toys, and I smiled their joy, a light I hadn't known I needed. I sat, the wood cool beneath me, and watched them, my mind drifting. I'd spent so long fighting Nathan, his lies, my own doubts, that this stillness felt foreign, like a language I was relearning. A jogger passed, her ponytail swinging, and I thought of the mornings Nathan and I used to walk here, planning our future. Those memories didn't cut as deep now. They were just moments, not the truth of who I was. I'd been afraid to come back to this park, afraid it would pull me under. But today, it felt like mine again. I leaned back, closing my eyes, letting the warmth of the sun sink into me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I opened it to a message from Sadie. "Picnic at noon, got Hannah and Clara coming." I typed a quick yes, my lips curving. They'd become my people, not just friends, but a family I'd chosen. Sadie had earned her way back, one quiet apology at a time. Hannah had grown closer, her own strength blooming. And Clara was a steady hand, a voice that reminded me I could stand tall. I pushed the stroller forward, heading toward a small clearing where kids played tag, their laughter sharp and free. The twins watched wide-eyed, and I wondered what they'd love as they grew soccer books chasing fireflies. I wanted them to have a world bigger than the one Nathan left behind. That thought didn't ache anymore. It felt like a promise I could keep. A familiar voice called my name, and I turned to see Marcus walking over, his daughter skipping beside him. She waved, her braids bouncing, and ran to the stroller, giggling at the twins. Marcus stopped, his hands in his pockets, a soft smile on his face. "You look good out here," he said. "Like you belong." I laughed, the sound easy. "I'm trying," I said, and meant it. He sat on the bench, his gaze on the clearing. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice thoughtful. "I want to start a community center, a place for single parents to connect, get support. You inspired it, you know. Your fight." I blinked, surprised, warmth spreading through me. "Me?" I asked, my voice soft. He nodded. "You didn't give up. That's rare." His words settled deep, not as praise, but as truth. I'd fought because I had to, but hearing it reflected back made me see myself differently. Not broken, not abandoned, but someone who'd built something from the ashes. I looked at the twins, their curious eyes taking in the world, and felt a quiet pride. They'd know that strength not just in stories, but in me. Marcus stood brushing off his jeans. "You coming to the picnic?" he asked. I nodded, my smile steady. "Wouldn't miss it," I said. He walked off, his daughter tugging his hand, and I stayed a moment longer, the park alive around me. The breeze carried the scent of lilacs, and I breathed it in my heart, slowing my body at rest for the first time in months. The clearing buzzed with life as I pushed the stroller toward the picnic, the twins' soft chatter blending with the hum of voices. Sadie had spread a checkered blanket under an oak, its branches casting dappled shade. Hannah knelt beside her, unpacking a basket, her laughter bright. Clara sat cross-legged, slicing apples, her smile warm as she waved me over. I parked the stroller, the twins' eyes wide at the colors and sounds, and settled onto the blanket, the grass soft beneath me. Sadie handed me a lemonade, the glass cool against my palm. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her own. We clinked glasses, the sound sharp and clear, and I sipped the tartness, waking me up. Hannah leaned over, her voice soft. "You look different," she said. "Stronger." I met her eyes, seeing the sister who'd fought her own battles, and nodded. "I'm getting there," I said, my voice steady. Clara passed me an apple slice, her fingers brushing mine. "You've come far," she said, her tone quiet but sure. I thought of her note, her courage in the hospital, and felt a gratitude too big for words. "I'm glad you're here," I said, and she smiled, her eyes crinkling. The twins reached for the apple, their giggles pulling us all in, and for a moment, we were just people, not stories of loss or fight. Marcus arrived, his daughter running ahead with a kite. He joined us, his presence easy, and shared his plans for the community center. "I want it to be a place where people don't feel alone," he said, his gaze distant but hopeful. I listened, picturing a space where others could find what I'd found, hear connection, not pity. "I'll help." I said the words, slipping out before I could think. He grinned, and I felt useful, like my hands could build something lasting. Hannah pulled out a small box, her fingers hesitant. "I found this in Mom's old things," she said, handing it to me. Inside was a silver locket, its surface worn but warm. I opened it, my breath catching at a tiny photo of Mom, her smile soft, eternal. "She'd want you to have it," Hannah said, her voice thick. I clasped it around my neck, the weight grounding me like Mom was here, nodding me forward. We ate the food, simple but good sandwiches, fruit cookies Sadie swore she didn't burn. The twins gummed on soft bread, their faces messy, and I laughed, the sound free. I looked around at Sadie's careful hope, Hannah's quiet strength, Clara's steady calm, Marcus's open heart. They weren't just my safety net. They were my home, built from choices, not chance. As the sun dipped, I stood brushing crumbs from my jeans. "There's something I want to do," I said, my voice low but firm. I led them to a small sapling near the clearing, its leaves tender and green. I'd bought it last week, a whim that felt right. "This is for the twins," I said, kneeling to pat the soil. "For their future, so they'll know they're rooted in love." I handed each person a small stone markers for the tree. They placed them in a circle, their hands careful, their silence full. I spoke to the twins, my voice soft. "You'll grow strong like this tree," I said, "and I'll be here always." They babbled, unaware but present, and I stood, the locket warm against my chest, the stones a quiet promise. The picnic wound down the sky, turning pink. We packed up our movement slow, like we didn't want to break the moment. I pushed the stroller back, the twins dozing, their faces peaceful. The park faded behind me, its sounds softening, and I walked home, my steps light, my heart full. I wasn't running from the past anymore. I was carrying it gently into a life I'd made mine. The morning light slipped through my kitchen window, painting the counter in soft gold. I stood at the stove, stirring oatmeal, the twins babbling in their high chairs. It was a year since that day outside the maternity ward, and the apartment felt different now, warmer, fuller, like it had grown with us. I spooned fruit into bowls, my movement steady, no longer rushed by fear. The twins clapped their messy hands, reaching, and I laughed, the sound quiet but real. I'd started waking early, a new habit born from sleepless nights that turned into choice. The stillness of dawn gave me space to think, to piece myself back together. I'd sit with a coffee, the mug's heat grounding me, and watch the city stir outside. Those moments were mine, a gift I hadn't known I could claim. They taught me I didn't need to fill every silence with worry. The twins were growing fast, their curls wild, their eyes bright with curiosity. I'd named them Lila and Theo, names that felt like promises. They were my compass, guiding me through days that once felt impossible. I'd found a rhythm work at a local bookstore, naps in the afternoon, bedtime stories under a quilt. It wasn't grand, but it was ours, built from small, deliberate steps. I opened the drawer by the sink, pulling out the notebook I'd started for them. Its pages were thick with entries, moments I wanted them to know. Today, I wrote about the bookstore, how I'd read to kids in the story corner, their faces lit with wonder. I wrote about the twins' first steps, wobbly but brave, and how I'd cheered my heart full. These words were for them, but they were for me too, proof I was more than my scars. Hannah called as I cleaned the dishes, her voice bright through the phone. "I'm coming over," she said. "Got a surprise." I smiled, drying my hands. She'd been a constant now, her visits a thread weaving us closer. When she arrived, she carried a small canvas painted with a simple horizon, blue sky, green hills. "For your wall," she said, her eyes soft. Something new. I hung it above the couch, the colors catching the light. It wasn't just art. It was a reminder that beauty could grow from quiet places. Hannah sat with the twins, teasing them with a rattle, and I watched, my chest warm. She'd faced her own storms, leaving a partner who dimmed her light, and I saw my strength in her, a mirror of survival. The doorbell rang, and Clara stepped in her nurse's scrubs traded for jeans. She carried a small plant, its leaves vibrant. "Thought your place could use some green," she said, setting it on the windowsill. I hugged her, her steadiness a gift I'd never repay. She'd stayed in touch, her calls a lifeline, her stories of patience and hope, a reminder that healing was possible. We sat around the table, the twins in our laps, and talked about small things, Clara's new garden, Hannah's painting classes, the twins' love for splashing in the bath. The conversation flowed easy and unforced, and I felt rooted, like I belonged to this moment. I wasn't the woman who'd stood alone in that parking lot anymore. I was Abigail, still learning, but unafraid to try. As they left, I tidied the kitchen, the twins dozing in their cribs. I paused by the window, the plant's leaves glowing in the fading light. The city stretched out below, alive and indifferent, but it didn't scare me now. I'd found my place in it, not by running from the past, but by walking through it. I closed my eyes, the day's warmth lingering, my breath slow and even, ready for whatever came next. The evening settled over the apartment, the sky outside a deep indigo. I sat on the couch, the twins asleep, their soft snores, a gentle rhythm. The canvas Hannah gave me hung on the wall, its horizon line steady like a promise of tomorrows I could trust. I held the locket from my mother, its silver cool against my fingers, and opened it, her photo, a quiet presence. I'd been carrying her strength all along, even when I couldn't see it. I thought of Nathan not with anger, but with a strange clarity. He'd chosen his path, one that broke us, but I'd chosen mine too. I didn't need to forgive him to move forward. I needed to forgive myself for believing I wasn't enough. That was the hardest part, letting go of the voice that said I'd failed. It wasn't about erasing the pain, but about building around it like a house with new rooms. I stood moving to the bookshelf and pulled down a small wooden box. Inside was a photo of me and Nathan taken years ago at a county fair, our faces flushed from laughter. I hadn't looked at it since he left, but now I held it without flinching. It was just a moment, not my truth. I slipped it back into the box, closing the lid gently, and felt lighter, like I'd set down a weight I'd carried too long. The next day, I hosted a gathering at the community center, a small event Marcus had helped plan. Parents milled around, sharing coffee and stories their kids playing nearby. I spoke briefly, my voice calm, about starting over, about finding strength in the people who show up. Eyes met mine, nodding, and I saw myself in them, not alone, not defined by loss. The twins toddled at my feet, chasing a ball, and I smiled, my heart full. Afterward, I walked home alone, the streets quiet, the air crisp. I passed a shop window, catching my reflection, not the woman who'd crumbled, but one who stood taller, eyes clear. I'd learned to trust again, not blindly, but carefully, choosing who deserved my heart. Sadie, Hannah, Clara, Marcus. They'd shown me that trust wasn't a risk, but a gift, one I could give myself to. The deepest lesson wasn't about winning or losing. It was about choosing to live even when the ground shakes. Pain shapes you, but it doesn't own you. I'd found freedom in that, in knowing I could fall and still rise, not because I was fearless, but because I was willing to try. The twins would grow up knowing that not just from my words, but from the life we'd built steady and true. What's the hardest truth you've had to face to find your freedom? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. It's how we connect, how we heal. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe to join me on this journey. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for being here, for listening. Here's to finding light in the quiet moments. Take care.